Now let us look at the Spanish voyagers. The Spaniards began to engage in the voyages of discovery after they had succeeded in driving out the Moors or the Muslims in the south. Remember, we said that Portugal was the first because Spain was busy in driving out the Muslims from the southern part, while France and Britain, they were engaging in the war. So since Portugal dominated the sea route to India through the east, Spain decided to use an alternative route to India through the west. So we see to it, Portugal used the eastern route. What we are saying here is the same African map that we are drawing here. Yeah, then from Portugal, we said they were going to the eastern side using this eastern route to India. But Spain, we are saying that from Spain here, they wanted to use the western side to say, all right, we are going to the same India, but we want to use the the western side. India or Portugal used the east, while Spain wanted to use the western side. So that is how you have to understand. You have to understand it better. Spain for west, and Portugal for the eastern side. So the Spanish voyages of discovery were undertaken by Christopher Columbus, Amerigo Vespucci, and Ferdinand Magellan. So these were the people who embarked on the Spanish voyages of discovery. Christopher Columbus, let us look at him as a voyager. So he was a sailor from Italy in the city of Genoa. So who studied navigation in Portugal. So he was from Italy and he embarked on the Spanish voyages, but he started his exploration in Portugal. So he believed that it was possible to reach India by sailing westwards and thus avoiding a long journey around Africa. So to him, he believed that no. We cannot go round Africa. We need just go to the western side and immediately we are in India. So Columbus failed to get help from Portugal or from the Portuguese for his plan to sail to India through the western route. However, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, they agreed to support Columbus, that is Spain now. So they mandated him to discover and acquire the land for Spain. So he was supported by the Spanish government. So Columbus, he set off from Spain in 1492 with 3 ships, namely Santa Maria, Nina, and Pinta, and 92 men who were under his control. So he made for the Canary Islands from where he sailed. The first west, then south. Then he reached the San Salvador, the Watling Islands in the Bahamas, and then he discovered Cuba and Haiti there. So Columbus thought the islands were off the coast of India, so he named it West Indies. So the Bahamas and all the islands that are there, they are named the West Indies. Even up to now, if you open the atlas, go to the map, you find that it is named the West Indies. It was named by Christopher Columbus. So, and its inhabitants, he named them the Indians to say they were the Indians. So Columbus returned to Spain in 1493. Columbus made more 3 voyages and visited Dominica Islands and Trinidad and landed on the mainland of South America or at Honduras. So when he went back to Spain, he reported his findings and he went back again to discover more because the king had already mandated him to say, you need to discover more land for Spain. But what were the results of the voyages of Christopher Columbus? What were his results? Results of the voyages of Christopher Columbus. So the Spaniards, the number one, the Spaniards found rich treasures of gold and silver in Central and South America. So we see to it that the Spaniards or the Spanish, they found gold and silver in Central and South America that made Spain rich. And also, armed expeditions were sent to conquer rich kingdoms in Central and South America. For example, Hernando Cortes defeated the Aztec rulers of Mexico, while Francisco Pizarro, he conquered the Inca kingdom of Peru. The whole South and Central America came under the rule of Spain. So remember, we talked of the Aztec Empire, a topic on its own, where we were looking at very difficult names, if you can remember, very difficult names there of the gods of Aztec. At the end of it, we also mentioned of Hernando Cortes, who came and defeated them. He was sent or supported by the Spanish government. And also, the whole South America and Central America came under the rule of Spain. So we see to it that they were good results there. After Christopher Columbus, he recommended the expeditions to conquer the South America. Another Spanish voyager or explorer was Amerigo Vespucci. Amerigo Vespucci. He was an Italian navigator who claimed that on his first voyage, he had reached North American mainland before any other explorer. So he claimed that I have reached North America before any other explorer. So the new continent, therefore, was named America. So America, the name America comes from Amerigo Vespucci. Amerigo Vespucci, who was the Italian navigator, and he was supported by the Spanish government to go on exploration. So Amerigo Vespucci, it is America named after Amerigo Vespucci. And also Vasco de Balboa. Vasco de Balboa. So he discovered the Pacific Ocean. So it was him who went through who saw the Pacific Ocean as an explorer. Then there was also another explorer by the name Ferdinand Magellan. Remember, I show you the route where he went round the earth using the sea route. Ferdinand Magellan was sent by Spain to explore land. He was a Portuguese explorer who worked for Spain. He set out from Spain with 5 ships and 265 men in an attempt to discover the western route to the East Indies. He sailed southwest to Brazil and explored the river mouths such as the River Plate to find a route to the Pacific. Magellan realized that the ocean he was sailing through to America was calm. Then he named it the Pacific Ocean, which means peaceful. So Pacific, peaceful. It is Ferdinand Magellan, the Portuguese explorer, funded or supported by the Spanish government. He was the one who named it Pacific Ocean. Today, we still use the same name, Pacific Ocean. Just as we use the same name America today, it is after Amerigo Vespucci. At last, Ferdinand Magellan, he reached southern tip of America, or the American continent, and sailed through what is now called the Strait of Magellan, where one ship was lost in a storm and another deserted and turned back with a load of his provisions on board. So Magellan and his 3 ships, they sailed through the Pacific Ocean, and the sailors had little food and they were forced to eat rats and leather. You see that when things were not normal, now they were forced to go for the abnormal. So they were feeding on rats. They were eating rats and leather. So on March 21, they reached the Landroms Islands, where they got new supplies and later discovered the Philippine Islands, where Magellan was killed while assisting a friendly chief in a civil war. So you see to it that at the Strait of Magellan, the two ships, they were out of the expedition. One, it was lost by the storm. It means with the sailors, they got lost. The other one, with the storm, they were afraid. Then they turned back. But the one that turned back or that returned, it was the one that carried the food supplies and more the provisions. Hence, they suffered a lot. And that's why we are saying that they proceeded with the journey, but they were eating the rats until they reached the Landlocked Islands and the Philippine Islands. So in Philippines there, he found a new, a friendly chief. But that chief was busy with the civil war. So Ferdinand Magellan wanted to assist this chief, but however, he was killed during that civil war. So after his death, his ship or his journey were under the control of Sebastiano Delcano. So he followed the coast northwards and then struck out across the unknown Pacific Ocean. So he just proceeded and proceeded into the unknown area. So in 1522, after rounding the Cape of Good Hope, the remaining ship under Sebastiano Delcano reached Spain with one ship called Victoria and 18 survivors. Out of 265 crews, only 18 survived when they managed to go round the earth by the sea. So they returned to Spain on 6th September 1522. So the journey proved beyond doubt that the world is round. However, in terms of trade, the route was unprofitable as it was too long. It was too long, very long. So they managed to go round, but the journey was just very long. Here, now, let us look at the problems. What were the problems that were faced by Ferdinand Magellan's crew during their voyage? Number one, shortage of food and water supplies that forced the crew to depend on rats that infested their ships. So you can see to say, where did they get the rats? The rats were there in the ships. So the rats that were there, now they were busy catching those rats and eating them. So it was already food on board. So it was a problem because they had no food, there's no water supplies. You can wonder to say they had no water, but they were traveling in water. When we talk of the ocean water, it is the salty water. You cannot drink that water. You cannot even drink. It is salt, real salt, so you cannot drink that. So they had no water, no food. And diseases due to starvation and untreated water. So they were forced sometimes to drink untreated water. When sometimes they reach an island, they find maybe the water there, then they could just drink that water without treating it. Unnavigable water mass, and that led to the ship wrecks. So they were using the paths that had never been used. So those areas, they were unnavigable, unpassable, which resulted into the shipwrecks. The ships were broken, resulting into the death of sailors. And the strong winds that instilled a strong fear among the sailors. You know, in the ocean, the waves are very high, very high. So with that, sailors, they were afraid to somehow to proceed with the journey. That's why we said when they reached the Strait of Magellan there, one ship returned because they were afraid to say no, we cannot continue with this. And hostility from islanders that led to the death of crew members, including Magellan. So we said Magellan died in one of the areas, that is in Philippines there. And having looked at the Portuguese, having looked at the Spanish voyagers, now let us look at the Spanish defeat. um, of the Aztecs. So Spain claimed the islands that were discovered by Christopher Columbus, Amerigo Vespucci, Vasco de Balboa, and Ferdinand Magellan. Then the Spaniards began to settle in some of these areas, more especially in new lands of South America. But in America, they faced resistance from two indigenous groups who resisted the Spanish occupation. So these groups were the Aztecs of Mexico, and the Incas of Peru. We have mentioned these ones. So the Aztecs were under their king named Montezuma. So this one, to deal with them, then the Spanish sent Hernando Cortes with some 350 men who plundered the Aztecs in 1520. So the Incas of Peru were also hostile to the foreigners and were crushed by Francisco Pizarro in 1530. So after the Voyages had claimed those lands to say, we have found this land, we have found this land, then Spain embarked on sending the people to settle there. But other tribes were saying that they were resistant. So with that, then the Spanish, they could send the soldiers to capture that area by force. So that's why we are talking of in Aztecs. When they were under their king Montezuma, they were crushed by Hernando Cortes in 1520. And Francisco Pizarro, he crushed the Inca of Peru in 1530 because they did not allow the Spanish to come and settle there. The Spanish-Portuguese conflict during the voyages of exploration. So during those voyages as well, because they were going independently, Spain independently, Portugal independently, all the countries were going independently. But at one point in time, there were those conflicts between the Spanish and the Portuguese. So after the Spanish discoveries in the West Indies and South America, quarrels began between Portugal and Spain over the ownership of new discovered land, that is America, to say who is going to be the owner of America. So both countries appealed to the Pope. They appealed to the Pope to settle their dispute peacefully. So what happened was that the dispute was solved through the Treaty of Tordesillas in 1593. The Treaty of Tordesillas. It can be pronounced in other way around. In 1493. Under this treaty, therefore, the Pope Alexander VI, he drew a line on a map dividing the unknown lands between the two lands. So this line was called the Papal line. The Papal line. So when you go to the map there, you can, the atlas, it is there. In some of the atlas, you will find the Papal line there. So the line passed through the north-south meridian west of Cape Verde Islands, that is 46 degrees west, 46 degrees west. So it was agreed that all the land to the east belonged to Portugal, while the western lands belonged to Spain. However, in 1550, Spain conquered Portugal and the Papal line was no longer useful. So what happened was that when in 1550 Portugal was defeated by Spain, it meant that Portugal lost also the colonies outside herself. So what it meant, that area, it went to Spain. That's why it is called the Latin America, or in all the Latin America they speak the Spanish. The Spanish is their official language. Reason? Because of that, Spain dominated all that area. But in Brazil, Portugal still, the Portuguese had more influence than the Spanish. That's why in Brazil, the Portuguese is also spoken there. Results of the Spanish voyages of exploration. Number one, the discovery of New World, the Americas. So the Americas, we mean North America, South America, as well as all the islands that are there. They are all referred as the Americas, the Americas. Now, the discovery also of Pacific Atlantic link. There was that link between the Pacific and the Atlantic Ocean through the Magellan's journey, who navigated the channel in South America connecting Atlantic and Pacific Ocean. So Magellan's name for the Pacific was adopted by the Europeans. So that was another result. And also the discovery that the world is round. Magellan's voyages proved beyond doubt that the world is round. And also, the Spanish explorers, especially Magellan's group, made contributions to science by discovering several new animals entirely unknown to the European science. So we see to it that those people who survived that long journey of Ferdinand Magellan, they also brought in the knowledge of other animals, because as they were traveling, they discovered different places and different animals or different things that they discovered, and that thing, it was a major contribution to science.